Okay.
Hi, everyone. Want to thank you for coming to our first learning burst for 2023. And we want to welcome Amanda Wilkins with us. She will be doing our first 3 installments on gardening, and she will be walking you through how to actually start your garden and get everything going per what you guys asked for. So she is located in Lee County, but I'll let her tell a little bit about herself instead of me doing it. I'm just so excited, and she's always excited and loves to do this, loves to get her hands dirty, and that's what we love too. So welcome, Amanda, and thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I am so stoked that you guys asked me to do this. I was not expecting that. And I love talking about gardening. For those of y'all who are, in Lee County, y'all probably have met most everyone, I think. And it's been great to be involved with everyone's gardens here in Lee County. We have 6 partners that we work with through various ways, the collaborative as well as Farm to ECE. And last fall, I started in Lee County as the horticulture agent in August, and went right into helping with Farm to ECE. Before I came to North Carolina Cooperative Extension, I was the garden curator at Juniper Level Botanic Garden, and I did get my undergrad degree from NC State in horticulture. And I also have minors in sustainable ag and botany. And then I got my master's degree in the biodiversity and taxonomy of plants from the University of Edinburgh and the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh in Scotland. So I really am a plant nerd, I'm a garden nerd. And so it really does excite me to be able to share my garden knowledge with everyone and help folks have successful gardens. And it's one of the reasons why I think I love my job, is because my whole job is to help you guys be successful in your garden goals, whatever that looks like. And I think that's what we were bouncing around ideas. And the more I've worked with Sharonda and the Farm to ECE folks, kind of bringing it back around to, what do you need to know when you are getting started with gardening? And the reason you get to hear me 3 times and not just once is there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to think about. And so my first kind of installment is called Let's Be Real, because we have to be real about and reasonable about our garden goals. And so the whole point of this talk is to just go over those realities and things to think about, so that way when you are making gardening decisions about what you're going to do and the scope of what you're going to tackle, you know what you need to know, and you can research what you need to know, and hopefully not be surprised too much. So class 1, this is kind of what we're going over the next couple classes. So you want a garden, we're going to talk about program assessment and site assessment, and talk about a few resources. Class 2 is going to be like, what do you need? So the actual gardening materials, and how are you going to pay for it? So I mentioned that a little bit, but there are quite a few funding sources that are out there as you start to build your gardening program. And money obviously is always the limiting factor with many things. So we're going to talk about what you need and how you're going to pay for it. And then class 3, we're actually going to talk about the plants, because the plants are the easiest part, to be really honest. They may be the most intimidating part, but they're actually really the easiest part, because plants want to live. They want to live, and sometimes they live despite us. For those of y'all who are houseplant keepers, some people just have that gift of keeping things alive, and some people are just houseplant killers despite their best efforts. And there's lots of reasons for that, but anyways. So like I said, I am talking to you from Cooperative Extension, and so we are an organization that tries to give the public easy and understandable access to all the resources at North Carolina State University, NCANT, as well as a national network of other extension services throughout the state. And they are all administered by land-grant universities across the United States. And we also have several international partners. Here in Lee County, I'm funded. I am actually a county employee and an NC State employee. So I serve the county of Lee, but I also serve the state of North Carolina, which is a lot of fun. So my whole goal is just to say, hey, here's some things you might need to know and to be of service to you guys. My door is always open. Theoretically, if my door is closed, I'm usually in a meeting, but if you come by, I'm always open to talking. And if folks ever need a site visit, I'm always happy to go out and look at people's gardens with them. And many horticulture agents across the state, that is also their job. So this presentation is mostly mine, but there are all these wonderful people who have also contributed slides and photos and effort into it. Definitely Kathleen Moore, Lucy Bradley, Donna Teasley, Matt Jones, Garland Miles, and Emily Culbertson. A lot of the slides and photos came from them, but a lot of them are also from myself. Anyways, so let's get started. So you want a garden. Look at this gorgeous garden. This was my garden, not mine, the Juniper Level Botanic Garden staff's summer vegetable garden in 2021. And this was probably the prettiest, most idyllic picture of a vegetable garden I've been able to take. You're probably looking at like 40 different plants here. And it was a beast. It was really hard at the end of the day to stop my car as I'm driving out, because the driveway to leave is there on the left of the picture. And this is only half of the garden. There's a whole other half behind me. And it was beautiful and it was gorgeous. And while it looked like this, it was really easy to get people to come out, but it was really hard to get folks to stop in July and August. They would just wave at me as they went by. So this is definitely not a beginner garden, and this is definitely not a garden you should tackle with just one person like I tried to, because what we really want is success. We don't want your gardens to be a chore. We want them to be fun. They are going to be chores, but they also can be fun. So the things we're going to talk about today, kind of how it all comes together. Really, what you plant and what you do in your garden, how you develop your garden plan, really depends on who and what you're trying to accomplish at your center. What age groups are you going to engage in the garden? How many different age groups? How are your teachers possibly going to use this? What are your favorite plants? What are the things that you like to do? Gardens are a reflection of the people who work in them. And so be very real with yourself. How are you going to use this? Because a garden is not just something that is pretty. It is a tool. It is a resource. And just like any other resource, if you're going to spend money and time on it, it needs to give something back to you, even if it isn't a bounteous crop of vegetables. It can still be a resource for lessons and teaching. So once you have that idea, you're going to go, okay, well, what do I actually have to work with? What does your site actually look like? Do you have a lot of space? Do you have a little corner? Do you only have a couple of pots? Like, be really real about that site assessment. We're going to walk through that, because both of those things at the end of the day are going to inform what you're actually going to grow. It's really tempting, and I say this because it's really tempting to go to the garden center and be wowed by the beautiful plants, especially like the big box stores are really good at coordinating with some of the resources, some of the wholesalers on like finding tomatoes and fruit and flower that you can buy. And you feel so accomplished because you bought this plant that has fruits and flowers on it. And actually, that's may not be the best way to grow that tomato or incorporate that tomato into your landscape. Or you may not even need to have that tomato in your landscape, depending on what you've got going on. So we are going to walk through all things together. So these are the questions we're going to ask. And We're recording this. If you want to take a picture of this with your phone or just like want to screenshot it, these are the things that if you don't listen to the next 30 minutes of me talking, just keep these in mind. The first question is, what kind of time do you have? Like, really, this is going to be your time. Who's going to help in the garden? Is this a one-man band show? It shouldn't be. Or do you have a group of teachers that are really interested? Do you have parents that have said, hey, I would be willing to help you do this if you did this? How are you going to use it with your classes? What are your goals? How are you going to pay for it? Where are you going to put it? And what is it going to look like? And these are kind of actually in order of importance. I have this picture here on the right is a picture of our demonstration garden here at Lee County Extension Center. I consider this a demonstration because these are ornamental pots. They're out sitting on concrete. They have, they're growing vegetable crops, they're growing tomatoes, they have different soil in them. So I have all these talking points that even though it's only a little corner of my demonstration garden, I can still show folks that you can grow tomatoes in pots, and here's some challenges that go with that. We can watch them grow in a very easy way. So there's lots of lessons to tell, even in a small space. And then the plants, because that's my favorite part. So horticulture, that's what we are. We're going to put on our horticulture hats because horticulture really is the art, science, and practice of garden cultivation and management. That's what makes gardeners like legit. This is our legit title. And these are two volunteers I managed when I worked at the Mobile Botanical Gardens. And plants are, this is a well scaled down version of a plant, roots, stems, and leaves, flowers and seeds. This is not a real plant. This is more like what a real plant looks like. And it says a complete plant of Brassica campestris. This is related, this is the wild relative of broccoli and kale. But I would like to show this to students because this shows really the complexity that plants are. They're not just things hanging outside, not being alive. They are very much alive. They have all these different characteristics and this very unique physiology. And as you're gardening and as you're teaching your kids and your students about these things, I think it's important to appreciate the complexity of these organisms as you're managing them and teaching them to people. As a gardener, you are observing things. We're going to talk a lot about observation today because you are going to be an observer moving forward. And these are all these things that I'm teaching you today. They're not just for you. These are things that you can walk through with your students as well. All these things are things that you can pull out as lessons, part of different STEAM and STEM programs. So, you can put your teacher hat and your horticulture hat on today. Anyway, so abiotic factors are important to consider because these are the non-living things found in an ecosystem. In your center, your school is an ecosystem, both inside and out. For those of y'all who have had a mouse or a snake or a cockroach run through, it is an ecosystem. Those things sometimes live with you. And sometimes they're coming inside because it's cooler in there than it is outside. But to break those down a little bit more, this is kind of the space outside and around. This is the space between plants. This is the space between you and plants. This is the space between different objects in the garden. Your climate is an abiotic factor because it's not just the weather, it's the weather each day, the weather in a week. This is the weather in a 10-day forecast. It takes in consideration how humid it is and the wind and how much rain we get, which I'm hoping we'll get some rain soon. The soil, which I'm going to put an asterisk on that one because soil is alive, and the light. We're going to talk about how to assess that. And this is Felder Rushing, who is a writer down in Mississippi, good friend of mine. And this is his truck. He drove it from Mississippi to Mobile, Alabama. those are living plants in the back of his truck. And he has just figured out through trial and error that this little microclimate in the front part of his truck bed, he's able to grow these plants. So by being a discerning gardener, he's been able to be successful. Shout out to Barbara and her crew. So y'all are gardeners. What's your job? To help plants reach their full genetic potential. And by full genetic potential, it means, is it going to give you tasty vegetables? Is it going to give you tasty fruit? Is it going to make some pretty flowers that pollinators and other things are going to visit? And you're going to do this by taking in, analyzing, and managing the living factors and the abiotic factors we just talked about in your garden. And then, of course, have fun. We have to have fun. It has to be fun. Make it fun. We are going to cover a lot of ground today. Sharonda, please, please, please keep me on time because I don't have a clock in front of my face and I will go down some rabbit holes. So don't let me talk too long. So looking at those questions again, here we go. What do you need to consider? So what kind of time do you have? Let's be real. We're all really busy. Y'all are managing students. Some of y'all are managing different age students. You're having to keep them occupied. You're having to feed them and get them down. Do you have time? Because it's not just planning. It's all of these things that go into managing a garden space, no matter what size it is. Sometimes it can be done in a matter of 5 minutes. Sometimes it can be done, it takes hours. Really depends on the size, but be real with yourself. It all takes time. So be gentle and reasonable with yourself. So this little garden that I've got right here that I was telling y'all about, it's very easy for me to take a 10-minute break from my desk. I go out there, I check it for weeds, I pull the weeds that I see. I've already pruned the tomatoes a little bit because they were already starting to send out side branches. I take a few minutes to water, and in about 10 minutes, I can walk out there, check it, do the basic maintenance, and walk back inside. And so it's taken me about 30 minutes a week to check this, make sure it's watered and cared for. So that's 3 pots, 10 minutes a pot, not so bad. So, but if you're scaling it up, it starts to add up. So start small, start with success and 1 or 2 plants. Tomatoes and other, there are a few vegetables that are challenging. I'm not saying don't try them, because even a failure or a seeming failure is actually a success because you can learn something from it. But there are things that are easier to do than others, like kale here. Kale's super easy, and some herbs. Herbs are super easy because they're perennials. There are some reseeding annuals, oh, I don't have, my brain just went swing. And weed control is very important. We have some weed resources we're going to talk about next time that I can share with y'all as well. And it's really important to consider how you're going to use what you're going to grow, especially if you're growing fruits and vegetables, and be reasonable about how much you're going to grow. Also, contact your local cooperative extension office. It's going to be a continuing theme, y'all. So for this bed though, remember this was a 1/4 acre plot. It took daily watering. It took daily harvest checks. It took me time to process the harvest. It took time to weed. It took time to prune, stake, thin, all those maintenance things. And if I was being conservative, it took 20 man-hours a week to manage this spot. And did I manage it perfectly? Heck no, there were still things that there were still weeds that got through. But I did have volunteers to help me. This was not the Amanda show. But just to put in perspective how much time stuff takes. You are not going to be able to feed your school out of your garden. You can supplement what you're going to be growing, what you're going to be eating with what you grow, but don't go at this thinking, I am not going to ever have to buy vegetables again, because you are going to need a lot more help to do that. Meredith Favre, I think, and I'm hoping I'm quoting this correctly, I think she found a statistic that a 1 acre market garden that's producing a diversity of vegetables could take anywhere between 30 and 70 hours a week of management to harvest. So, you know, small is okay. Supplementing snacks is okay. You can work up to something. Where friends come in, and this is Bill and Meredith out of the Lee County office. I love that picture. Who is going to help you? Do not, I repeat, do not. I want everybody to repeat this with me. Do not do it alone. I know that some of y'all are 2-man bands out there, are small, very small staffs, but it doesn't just have to be your teachers. It could be parents, it could be grandparents, it could be people that you know in the community that you trust that can come into your centers and have, you know, have the proper paperwork signed. But don't do it by yourself. There are lots of people out there who want to help you, but recruit them before you break ground. And to do that, you need to have a vision and have a plan for them so that when they come to help you, you are accomplishing the goals that you want to accomplish. Oh yeah, and contact your local cooperative extension office because they might have people who can help you too. Also having friends with trucks helps too, by the way. How are you going to use the garden in your classes? It doesn't just have to be eating the vegetables out of your garden. If you already have STEAM elements to your programs, consider the lessons that you can teach in your garden. We just talked, I just told you guys all about the abiotic factors. You could just stand there in the garden and point out those things to your students. Point them out every time you go outside. What does it feel like in the sunshine? Is it windy today? Is it hot? Is it cold? You know, what does this plant feel like? There are lots of different really simple things you can do just by going on a garden walk. There are also like a plethora, an overwhelming fire hose of printed resources out there. Sometimes it's a little bit too much. So sometimes talking with your peers, with us on here, like, hey, if you find something that's really cool, share it with a friend. I think I got really hung up. I got really hung up on this one last year, and I'm still pretty hung up on it. It's a great resource. It's super easy. When you are doing gardening, you can see here in this picture, these are 3s that I'm working with garden tools. Those are metal tips on the ends of those tools. When they went to pull those out, I thought we were going to go and do this one activity. I realized they had not been trained in tool safety. So before we even walked away from the tool shed, which is behind me, I said, hold on, we got to learn about how to treat our tools and how to treat our tools with friends. And hey, we don't have enough tools for everyone to have one. So let's find a buddy and we're going to take turns with our tools. And we had to have that whole conversation before we even started talking about the compost that we eventually talked about in this picture. And with 3s, as everybody knows, 3s don't always have the best motor control. So we were doing very slow, intentional movements with our 3s and making sure that they were very mindful of where their tools were. And they had to like verbally acknowledge with me where their tools were before we started doing any movement. So just make sure you're being age appropriate with your activities. I did have a note here, if you do have vegetables or herbs that you have that are ready in your garden. I don't want to discourage folks from eating directly off of plants, but just be mindful. If there are cats in your neighborhood or dogs and the plants are low on the ground and the fruit's low on the ground, it may be safer to wash those fruits and vegetables before you put them in your mouths. And that can be another lesson. Hey, you know, before we eat out of our garden, we go and wash it. Really super simple lessons we can teach with our kids. And you should contact your local cooperative extension office. And these are 2 resources I know that we've shared several times in the Farm to ECE group. But we are also here, including 4-H. For those of y'all who have students that are younger than 5, 4-H doesn't quite cover you guys, but they still do develop resources for younger students. And there is the Junior Master Gardener program, which a lot of it has been adapted in this Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go guide. Be very intentional about what you're growing and how you're going to use it. If you're growing tomatoes, maybe do some tomato recipe research before you get too far gone. An early season harvest can look like this. I got one okra pod, it came in, but it can quickly go to something that looks like this in a very short amount of time. And I don't know what you do with 24 eggplants of 3 different varieties. Like who's going to eat that many eggplants? I don't like baba ganoush, but some people turned it into baba ganoush. But so you really don't want to grow more than you need, because you can use that space for other things. And it's okay. It is okay to go to your favorite search engine and go, what recipes work good for kids? Sometimes you can be surprised. It does take extra work on yourself, but it is a viable option. What are your goals? A lot of folks think food. We're going to teach our kids how to grow food so they can learn how to grow food for themselves. And that is awesome. That is a valiant lesson. We need more farmers. We need our young people to understand that farming is a viable career option, because it is. We need farmers because society likes to eat and not a lot of people like to grow food, which is unfortunate. So encouraging kids to know that is a thing is very important. And gardens can be beautiful. And there is tons of research on the health benefits of just being outside and appreciating the beauty of nature, even for young folks. And when kids get outside, especially in our 5 and less age group, there are lots of things that happen to their brains that we are still uncovering. So there's something to be said for the beauty and outdoor appreciation. And then also by being outside, kids learn to be outside and appreciate nature. And as they get older, they realize that they need to be respectful and care for nature. And we need folks to be more mindful of that. This is a teaching tool. All these things I'm telling you, I'm teaching you with a garden. Then you can pass these lessons on to kids. So if there are specific things that you want to teach, think about how your garden can help you teach those things. And I've been talking with some of our folks in the county, and I love how they use gardens as a way to teach character building, like respect and like care for each other and care for living things, and about appreciating your space, and about loving things and what that means. And I know that those seem very, of course, like those are great goals, but you can be very intentional about how kids are interacting with your plants. Because sometimes the kids just want to like pull the leaves off and you're like, wait, that plant needs that to grow. And you can talk about why that is. How are we going to pay for it? We will talk about this later. But if you've never gardened before and you just want to start, give yourself a $100 budget. Go buy a pot, go buy some soil, go buy a nice plant, start with that. $100 will get you something really nice, and something that you can show your kids. Also, as your parents get more and more involved, they may be willing to donate. They may have gardens at their own place and have plants to share that they can share with the gardens. There are cost share programs, and obviously you're here. And so I know that there's some funds that go into participating with the learning bursts. So something to be said for that. And also you should contact your local cooperative extension office, because there are a lot of grants and different programs that come across my desk all the time. And so if I know what you are working on, if I know kind of what your goals are, if I know if you've got plans to expand, or if you want to do a certain program and something comes across my desk, I can share that with you. And a lot of extension agents, they just need to know that you're working on stuff to connect you with some of those financial resources. What is it going to look like? Whatever you want. it does frustrate me when somebody comes to me and go, what should I plant in my garden? Whatever you want. This is a quick shout out to Sanford Childcare. This is what they've done in this is their playground. And so they've got a stage on the outside of the screen is this open area. There's all their toys over there, but there's a little gardening nook. And so they always see it. And even if they're not in the garden, working on the garden, it is in their space. It's part of the space that they are in, and they're always going to be observing it, even if they're not facilitated in that space. But make sure it's practical for you. Practical looks like different things for different people, and make sure it's safe. You know, if a child wanders into the space, they're not going to be, there's no tools laying around, there's no sharp edges, or if there's sharp edges, they're covered. Just, you know, think about if a child was in this space unsupervised, what trouble could happen. Make sure it works for your center. This is very functional because it's just far enough out of the way where it's not underfoot, but it's just close enough to where if you needed to get there, you don't have to go through anything. Make sure it's maintained and you can maintain it. This is another kind of lesson in not biting off more than you can chew, because if you go for something and then you realize you don't have the time for it, you know, the visual stress of just going, I can't do this anymore, or I'm not able to perform, doesn't mean you're wrong or anything, you know, you're a bad person. You know, life happens, but it can also cause undue stress, and it can make it hard for you to have a positive relationship with the space. And then again, I can't stress enough, make sure it aligns with your teaching goals. Because again, it is a tool for you to use to teach your lessons, whatever those are. So where are you going to put it? I would not recommend this. This was at a center, and I appreciated their ingenuity because this is what they had and they worked with it. And there are lots of lessons that we can teach from this, because there are flowers on this. There were a few vegetables. It's in the playground, so there are lessons to be taught here. Is this going to produce a large amount of fruit? No, but at least the plants are here with the students and they can see them and they're in their space. So we're going to walk through some site considerations. What am I looking at? Oh man. We've got 15 minutes, Sharonda.
Well, actually, it's only 2 minutes after 4. So you're good to go.
Oh,
You got
good.
like 30 minutes.
Okay, great. That's great.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm so long-winded, sometimes I worry. So site consideration. So this is where the rubber meets the road. These are the things that you have to think about, the practical things to think about as you are figuring out where, if you want a garden, where is it going to go? And this is at Estelle's, one of Estelle's here in Sanford, one of her locations. And you can see, again, it's right next to the playground. It's not in the playground for logistical reasons. And also this side of the playground is for much younger kids. So maybe something like this is not appropriate for them, but it's still in their visual space and they still see it, which there's a lot of research that has shown even just seeing a garden can be very, very beneficial to children. I've got this arrow here because this is actually showing where water is moving through, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but this picture is a little misleading. It's actually on a slope. You can kind of see the deck a little bit, but we oriented these beds this way. So we would hopefully reduce the amount of water potentially undermining the beds. So something even as minor, you can see there's about 7-8 feet away from this impermeable surface, but just being aware of that is really important, even just in the orientation. So first thing is site access. Can you get to it? You would be surprised how many times I've gone out to someone's place and they've put a garden over in the far corner and they're not using it and stuff is going wrong, or something got eaten and they're like, what can I do? And it's like, well, how often do you come visit this space? How often do you bring mulch to it? And you'd be surprised, like people like, well, the plants were fine here and I was just letting them grow, and they just don't. And visiting a space and being able to access a space can make a difference. We were putting this garden bed over at Stepping Stones, and you can kind of see we just had just enough give to get the kit into the fence. Otherwise, we would have had to have carried the whole kit into the fence to build it. So think about that. What materials are going to use? Can you get them to where the garden is going to be? Especially soil and media. Soil and media are very heavy. They're sold in 30 to 50 pound bags. Just think about that. Is the site used in another way? So again, this garden bed is going into the 1s and 2 side. So is that good? Yes, because the 1s and 2s are going to see this garden bed, but there's going to have to be, we're going to have to be mindful of how how we're getting them to interact with this, because it is a metal bed. It can get hot. It does have sharp edges. Are there obstructions like this fence? This is an obstruction because we can't go straight to the garden. Topical challenges, I mean hills. Is it in a weird location? Are there like weird bumps and things on the site that you think you want to use? Can the children safely access the area or be in the area? Maybe putting one, if you've got like a little strip by the road, maybe that's not the best place because you want your children to feel safe going up to that area. Is there a septic field where you have space? If there's a septic field, that is not the space for a children's garden. There are a lot of things that you can do in a septic field, but vegetable production is not one of them. And if you put a raised bed there, you could possibly cause issues with your septic field. So also another thing is, are there a lot of deer nearby? We're having a lot of trouble with deer nowadays. So be reasonable about what kind of deer pressure you have. I don't remember where I took this picture, but I just was like, wow, that is a lot of hardware. And that's a lot of money. What I'm really looking at, I see that and like, is that really worth all that hardware? Is it really worth the vegetables you're going to get out of it? How functional and feasible is that space? How often are you really going to check on that garden? Be real. If you only have 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week or an hour a week, that's okay. We're all very busy. But maybe these silver beds here on the left-hand side, they take a little bit more than 30 minutes a week to manage. That's probably looking anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours, depending on all the stuff you need to do, especially during the summertime when it's really hot and things are actively growing and you're harvesting and trying to replant. So just be really real with how often you're going to check on it. And if you're not going to check on it, who's going to be that passionate person who's going to check on it on an August afternoon after you've dealt with, a field trip? That's the person you want. So light requirements. Surprisingly enough, plants don't need full freaking blazing sun all day long. In fact, they don't like full blazing sun. They're very much like us. They don't want to be out in the full sun all the time. And so you can see here, at least 6 hours of sun a day, you can get a lot of leafy greens, root vegetables, really simple stuff. If you want fruits, like cantaloupe and cucumbers and tomatoes, they do need a little bit more light, but they don't necessarily need full sun. They need light. And the way to kind of start getting a sense of this is you need to, after you've kind of started going through your possible sites, you need to observe the light throughout the day. ideally doing it about every 1 to 2 hours to track how the sun moves through the site. And this is something you can do with your kids. Pick a day where you're going to like watch the sun and just be like, okay, everybody, we're going to do this every 2 hours or every hour. And, you know, we're just going to ask them to observe. So don't make it the one-man band. Observe where your shadows are, not just from your buildings, but also from any trees or other buildings nearby. And then do it a couple of times throughout the year, even if you've got, you know, beds growing, especially for those of y'all who are sometimes in the centers for a good long while and may not go outside, but for certain times of day for outdoor play. Observing it at different times of year and different times of day can help you get a sense of actually what is going on in your garden bed. And you can contact your local cooperative extension office to help you walk through that process as well. With the sun, so these are the kits that we purchased with some money for some of our centers last year. They are metal, they get hot in the sun, and if they get hot, it raises the soil temperature, which is not bad. Necessarily, it might be bad in July and August. We installed these in September, so this coming summer will be interesting to see how those summer vegetables do. But the more the materials are exposed to the sun, the hotter they're going to get. And they can also start degrading, and that's just the material. The plants will get more stressed as well. Also, if you're in an exposed area and these plants are experiencing full sun, they can be prone to temperature extremes and temperature swings as the day changes. But you can also be too shady. This is another garden bed at another center, and they put this on the backside of their building, and it receives pretty much almost full shade most of the day. This is the most light I think it got, and it showed the vegetables. We planted the same vegetables in a sunny bed at the same time, and the vegetables were 1/2 the size and weren't producing. Now there is such thing as what's called high shade. It's not sunny, but it's not shady. It's really bright. If you've ever been in this is kind of an area. This is at Estelle's place as well. This is her lower playground where we put 2 garden beds. I was a little skeptical, but it can be quite bright in this open area. So it's this open area in this forest, in the trees. And it's kind of in a low area, but it stays warm or bright enough there throughout the day that even though the beds aren't receiving full sun all the time, there's enough light bouncing around the forest that the plants should be fine, and they're benefiting from a little bit of a cooler climate because they're not getting that full blazing direct sun all the time. So contact your local cooperative extension office and we can help you parse that out. Sunlight is a blessing, but it is also a curse. So just be careful where you're putting your beds. Just because it gets full blazing sun all day long doesn't mean it's great. If that is your only option for growing vegetables, consider putting a structure over that you can put some shade cloth on. Just like you would put a shade cloth over your playground, your vegetables would probably thank you too. This is actually some turmeric that's being produced here in North Carolina, but this is some shade cloth thrown over some metal hoops, and this is something that you can put in your garden beds as well. The shade cloth comes in different grades, so you can get one that's 20% or 40%. I wouldn't go anything more than 40% if you start Googling. For most of our vegetables, they want about 20% shade would be fine. And you don't have to be anything special with your shade structures. I have come up with some janky systems before. So as long as you've got some good shade cloth, it can go a long way. Where is your water coming from? Because you're going to need water. This is North Carolina, y'all. It gets hot, it gets dry. Climate change is not a thing anymore. It is now climate disturbance. We don't know how our summers are going to go. Supposedly, according to the climate office, we're expecting it to be not necessarily warmer, but a lot wetter, a lot rainier, but then also longer periods of dry between these deluges of rain. So have a reliable source of water. If you don't, figure out a way to get some, or make sure that you're not putting in a large garden bed. Put in a bed that you can just carry a watering can or something simple too. These are some rain barrels I have on my house. If you've got a handy person around, this is a really great system because I hook a drip tape up to these and I put it in my vegetable beds. And each of those are 50 gallons. So I can water enough of an area to grow enough kale for me and my boyfriend. You can also go with drip irrigation. Again, that's a little more efficient, but you have to be on it, and it can be an expensive upfront cost. And I say that garden hoses are also getting very expensive, but pay for a good garden hose, especially if you have to drag it around. $100 hose is worth it. I know that's a little bit of sticker shock, but if you buy a $5 hose from Dollar General, it's going to last you a month, especially in our weather and some of the abuse that you can put it through in the garden. So invest in your garden. And just remember that light, temperature, humidity, what kind of container you have, what your media, your soil is made out of, is what's going to affect how often you're going to have to water. Remember all those abiotic factors, they're playing around here, and also humans, because again, July and August, if you're growing vegetables, they still need water if it hasn't rained in July and August, and you have to go out there and water them, because if you let them dry out, you will not have fruit. Weed control. So I posted this picture because it looks so pretty and clean and you can't see any weeds and it looks so nice. There was a lot of work that goes into weed control. And this is a picture I took in Canada. They're actually growing their vegetables in a greenhouse because they're in zone 3, where it's dark most of the year and they want to grow vegetables all year round. So they have complete control over everything, including anything coming up from the ground. But we don't have that here in North Carolina. You will have weeds. Even in those little 3 pots picture that I showed you, I already have had goosegrass popping up in that, little tiny ones. That's the time to pull them, because they're blowing in on the wind. We have weeds everywhere. They blow around. So just, you're going to have them. It's also important to think about what was there before you put the garden there. And if you have turf grass, and I'm looking at you, Bermuda grass, those of you who have warm season grasses, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can call your cooperative extension office and they will help you talk about that. The picture in the lower side with the raised beds, if you notice underneath the fabric, there's some green stuff kind of creeping out from between the edges. That's Bermuda grass that broke through my weed barrier and actually broke the fabric off of the staples. So that's something. I really should have killed it off with herbicide. So you have to ask yourself, are you open to using chemicals? There are ways to do that safely and do it such that you're not affecting your children and your garden area. There are safe ways to use them, and they are a great tool in the toolbox, especially if you're dealing with tough turf grasses like Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass went through 3 layers of cardboard and has already come up in all 3 of the beds in our demonstration garden. So, it is what it is, but it is something to consider, because Bermuda grass will take over a garden bed in less than a year, and you will not be able to grow anything in it, and you will not be able to get rid of it. Pulling does not work. And if you're doing a raised bed garden or trying to grow a bed in the ground, you still need to consider what material you're amending it with. Organic matter like compost, just make sure you're getting your compost from a reputable place. Compost is a really quick source for bad, noxious weeds, and you can introduce something into your space that wasn't there before just by using a improperly composted material. I have a picture of fire here for a reason, I promise. This is a controlled burn that was happening in Moore County. But fire is also an option if you're not using plastic in your garden. For some weed control, you can do some spot treatments with a flame weeder. Now, it's not setting fire to everything. It's a little torch that attaches to a propane tank. I need to get my video up of, we use it in our pollinator garden here because it doesn't leave any chemical residue. It burns the weeds. It doesn't kill them, but also if I accidentally get some fire on one of our desirable plants, the plant can usually grow through it and grow back, and I don't have to worry about potentially contaminating one of our desirable plants with an herbicide. So yeah, slope is important, and I did not, oh, I forgot to add my forgot to add my notes to this. Oops. It's important to know if you've got a slope on your site, if it's not level, you are going to get some water is going to run downhill. So especially if you're using drip irrigation or an overhead irrigation, you can sometimes run into issues on the upper side of the slope by not getting enough and also overwatering on the low side of the slope. Water moves through space. It goes downhill. This is a staircase at the Mobile Botanical Gardens. I think we got 8 inches in 3 hours one day. And I was walking around the garden, observing how the water moved. And this was a really pretty water feature, but it was actually a stairway. But apparently the way that we had oriented all of the walkways, all the water was funneled down this staircase. So just as you think about how we're going to be a wetter, heavier rain climate, make sure you're not putting your beds in a place where the water either pools or that it creates these gullies when we get hard rains. Also think about how the water could erode your beds where you put them. Sometimes high and dry can actually be very helpful. And wind, I'm almost done, y'all. Wind is one of those things, because you don't see it, you feel it, you can forget about it. But it is really important. So here at the extension office, I'm going to walk through our beds real quick. But if you are in a place where your garden space is going to be unprotected and kind of oriented near an open area, it can be very drying and very cold in the winter time. And if you're trying to grow vegetables, if you're trying to maintain any kind of vertical structure, especially in windier, cooler months, you're going to have to think about some windbreaks. Now, for those of y'all who are going to be putting them near your buildings, trees, fences, and buildings make quick, cheap windbreaks. Now, that's not to say that you don't want any wind getting to your garden, because wind is also helpful. It can help the plants dry out, so you're not leaving water sitting on their leaves. It can cool them in the summertime, and so those things are good. But it's usually those kind of northeast exposed areas that I worry about, especially with smaller gardens. So this is our demonstration area here at the Lee County Cooperative Extension Office. And this building was brand new when I first got here. And we started, I decided to use my budget to buy different versions of raised bed kits, because I had so much interest from not just our farm to ECE folks in the county, but also a lot of gardeners. They were really struggling with the diverse soils we have in Lee County, and people, especially if you go to YouTube University, the raised beds are the end all be all, and they're going to save all of your gardening problems, but it's not entirely true. They are just a different way of gardening, but I wanted to have this area for demonstration. And thankfully this building was put there because it is the perfect windbreak. There is enough space between our garden beds and the building for a skid steer or a lawnmower to get through, which is important for our county folks to manage the space because they do. I also want to make sure that heavy equipment can get around the bed because that's my training. On the right-hand side of this picture, we have combines and large farm equipment that have to access the field behind this, and their access road is just to the right of this picture. So those are things I had to think about as well when I put this here, but the wind was really the thing, because if you stand right up against that building, you don't feel any wind, which the plants don't feel any wind too, which is good for the winter time. But you can see from this picture in January, the grass is dormant. And this is Bermuda grass. So unfortunately, even if I had applied herbicide at this time of year, like I should have, it would not have killed the Bermuda grass, and I still would have a Bermuda grass problem during our growing season. So if I was doing the best of the best, I probably should have waited until April or May to put this garden bed in. So I could have killed the Bermuda grass as it started to come out of dormancy, but we didn't do that. We did this instead. We put cardboard. We put 3 layers of cardboard under each garden bed kit, and put those on top, and then surrounded them with landscape fabric. I did not want to put landscape fabric directly underneath the kits because I eventually want the cardboard's going to break down, and eventually the roots of the plants on our beds will eventually be able to infiltrate into the native soil, which is ideal.
Can I ask a quick question about how long does that take, Amanda? Because I did that in my backyard, I guess 3 years ago now. How long does that usually take for the cardboard to break down?
It should be about a year or less.
Okay.
We use cardboard in my compost pile at home, and we are able to get that to break down in about 3 to 6 months.
Okay, that would explain why I had so many weeds then coming in last year. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we did this on February 8th. This is Tracy, master gardener here in Lee County. She's my garden buddy. All the flags were there because I lost my landscape staples the day we were doing this. So I had to use something to tape down our landscape fabric. But we eventually got we got the material into the beds, and it was a mixture of a potting media product, compost from the city of Sanford, which is here in Lee County, and a sandy loam product. And it was it was probably a 3 to 2 to 1 ratio of those of compost from the city, the potting media product, and the sandy loam. And so we planted on the 28th. Our peas were coming up, and we planted sweet peas because I just wanted something growing in the beds, because Mother Nature does not like a vacuum, and I created a vacuum for her, so I filled the vacuum with peas. So these are our peas coming up on the 5th. I don't know why that photo is there, but I do love this picture of Tracy. But by the end of April, our peas were up and going, and I had a master gardener who was going to build me a trellis. That did not happen. So the peas are kind of freestanding, and by freestanding, I mean they're starting to lean and fall onto the landscape fabric. So, and I have friends. I had friends today help me pick peas. And we are probably going to harvest. So there are 4 bowls there. We could have filled all 4 of those bowls with the number of peas that we had in this bed. There were a lot of peas. So friends are important. So this was a lot. We covered a lot of ground today, no pun intended, but you can do it. This is going to be available to you, so you can like rewind it and go back and like, what did Amanda say about that? But you can do it. Just go for it. Like I said, start small. If it could be like this cute little cactus that you keep in your room, which you should not tape anything to a cactus, for the record. But I like to remind folks that plants don't read books. Sometimes we wish they would, because then they would kind of know what we know, and then we would be able to like anticipate what they're going to do. But they don't read the books we write about them. So they're just going to do the best that they can. And all you can do is be the best that you can be. People might judge you, but we're all human. And you can say that I'm going for it and I'm trying it and I'm making it work for my students, which is what the whole goal of this is. And every task, everything I talked to you about today, you can teach that to your children and your students. Every task and mistake and thing you're excited about and thing that you feel like was an achievement for you, everything you feel like a success for you is a learning opportunity for your students. These are things that if you're doing it at your center, at your school, they can do this at home too. And eventually, hopefully you want them to, because it's supposed to be fun. It is a way of life for me. And eventually, hopefully it'll be a way of life for you, but it's supposed to be fun. And just remember, there are tasty vegetables and fruits and pretty flowers and fuzzy bee bottoms ahead. So it's really exciting. And you are not alone. Even though I know when you're in your center and you're having to manage a room full or a daycare center full of students and parents and teachers and things and life is happening, you may feel a little alone with that, but there are people out there who want to see you succeed if you want to succeed. And so extension, I keep saying, contact your local cooperative extension office. If you have garden goals and you are not in Lee County, you can go to your extension office in your county and call them up and introduce yourself and say, hey, you know, I'm a school. I'm really interested in getting a garden in my school for my students. Can you help me? If they do not have time, you can call me. I don't know how much I can do, but we want you to succeed. There are also extension master gardeners.
Right after you went down, then he must have got the milk out because it's been sitting out.
So we press unmute. There are extension master gardeners in 86 counties in North Carolina. Sometimes they have bandwidth for incorporating projects with y'all. And obviously you can work out some of the liability and care, custody, and control, but also the parents and grandparents of your students and whoever their guardian is. Sometimes if you just put it out there that you're going to do a gardening project, you might be surprised by people who are interested in also trying it and trying it with you. And then community members. So here are some 2 resources to kind of get you going, because again, the future classes are going to be about some more of the technical stuff. But there is a gardening and preschools portal for you guys. And that's a wealth of knowledge of how-tos and guides like these that have been written, PDF versions. Almost everything on there is free. And then a planting calendar. So if you just are like totally jazzed up, or you already have a garden bed and you want to know what to plant right now, this planting calendar, if you're in central North Carolina, which is anything kind of like between Johnston County and Gaston County is kind of central North Carolina, this planting calendar is for you, and you can pick some things to start growing, because there is things that you can plant right now, even though it is May 10th. So thank you all for your time. I really do appreciate you guys being here today. And I see there are 18 things in the chat. Are there questions, concerns, comments?
There were a lot of comments that were in the chat. One about the smaller the cardboard, basically, the faster it breaks down. Is it safe for kids or just do early morning gardening? Is it that safe for kids to do early morning gardening? Let's see. My mouse doesn't want to remove.
Oh, so I see Donna planted some potatoes that had sprouted eyes. That's excellent. Very good. And Edna, I see you've got an empty garden bed right now, so check out that planting calendar. If you're not in Central North Carolina, there are planting calendars for Eastern North Carolina and the mountains of North Carolina. And they're in very easy to read formats for vegetable gardening. So, and what's up? So does anybody have any questions?
Actually, I
Anything?
do we get credit for this class? Like a
Yes, you
certificate?
will receive a, if you were here live, you will receive a certificate for today.
It comes by email? Should we leave our email? Because I got to get ready to clock out for the meeting.
Emma will send it to you. So yes, if you want to drop your information in the chat, just to make sure, that's fine. Does anyone else have any questions for today?
I have some questions about natural pesticides, but I think I'll just give you a call tomorrow.
No, go ahead and
So I
answer.
won't hold
Folks
everybody
might
up.
have the same questions.
No, we're actually good because I think I had it
Okay.
down. The learning bursts go until 4:45.
Oh,
Okay, so I heard you could soak like the orange peels and use that as a solution to go over some of the plants that will keep a lot of those flies off of it. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, so orange oil, citrus oil, there are some products that use it to that use that for fire ant control and some insect control. The problem with doing it yourself and kind of those do at home remedies is you may not know what the like how much of the ingredient that you actually need from that orange peel
Right.
in what you create. And so that's why I didn't go into this, but I will in the next one, but I'll say it here. So pesticides, anything that is sold as a pesticide in the United States is regulated by the EPA. And they have very specific labels and very specific processes that they have to go to be certified for sale for people. So that way, when you do buy a product, the whatever it says on the label, kind of like a nutrition label, you know that you're getting that amount in that product. So, and it's been tested to show that as long as you use it according to the directions on the label, it should not harm your plants. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's not worth a try, especially if it's a low, you know, if you haven't invested a lot of money in it, or if you just want to give it a try as an experiment, but you just can't guarantee that you're going to get the right amount of the active ingredient from the orange peel that in most other cases, yes, does what you say.
Okay, thank you.
And something to say about, you know, pests in the garden, especially if you're not growing, unless you have like a real bad infestation and like all of your crops are like showing signs of decline, you can tolerate insects and insect damage on your plants. Plants are very tough. They have been growing for hundreds of thousands of years, long before we came along, and a lot of them can withstand some damage. So, you know, and you can also take pictures and send them to me or your local extension office and say, hey, you know, is this something I should be concerned about? Because there are a lot of things that you really don't have to. And especially as you're kind of learning gardening and learning how to start judging whether things are going to be issues or not, it's better to slow play it than it is to start whipping out the chemicals, because a lot of times you can probably cause yourself undue stress for something that really the plants aren't ever going to notice. Yeah. Any other questions out there, y'all? So everybody's going to join me next time for what you need to do, what you need to buy, and how you're going to buy it.
That is correct. And I just want to share, again, we do this so that we can make sure that, you know, we're establishing a foundation for our children. And my third grader gets off the bus today with seeds in his hand. And he said, Mommy, I have some seeds. And I said, where'd you get these seeds? From school. And I said, what are they? He said, I don't know, but we're going to plant them and find out. So that's what and that's what we want. So I have these 3 seeds on my desk right now. And, we've been doing this for so long, and then I've been doing this with him, that he understands and he has that respect. And, that's what it's about. That's what we're doing. And we're teaching children how to forage and learn all about being healthy and being able to have their own food, so that we can try to eliminate these hunger apartheid areas, so that's what we're trying to do. So
Yeah.
thank you all for being with us today. As always, Emma will make sure that everything is wrapped up and it is sent out to you along with certificates. And next week, we will have part 2 with Amanda, going in and showing us even more, like she said, about what to buy, all that good stuff. Any questions in between now and then, please feel free to email myself or Emma. We can send them to Amanda, or feel free to go ahead and call Amanda or to email her directly as well. And she can make sure that she has all of those questions ready to go with answers next week for us. So if there's nothing else, it looks like we might get out 5 minutes early.
Enjoyed it. Y'all did a great job.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks,
Barbara.
Barbara.
Thank you for allowing Amanda to utilize your facility too to train us today. We
Oh,
thank you for that.
We love her visits.
Thank you. Oh, man. No, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And with that, I will stop the stop recording.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I really appreciate it.